Email distribution list building really sucks. Like really, really sucks. It's so time consuming and messy, and sometimes you even need IT approval to set up a mailing list. And forget about things changing and you now need to add or remove someone to that email list. It's just crazy. But we still need to be very surgical and targeted, right, when we drive change communications. Just blasting out the same message to everyone isn't really an option at all. So how do we get away from this crazy distribution list mess and Excel sheets of trying to manage which messages get to whom? We use Tigerhall's dynamic audience segmentation called Manage Groups. So how does this work? You have two options. The first is a standard group. So this is great for small groups that might not change that often. So say like a change champion network or an executive leadership team, or maybe your executive leadership team is also changing fairly often. But let's say any group that you know, this is going to be the group and we don't really have to change it that often. So let's call it Change Champions 2025. And the way that you add people into a standard group is just to simply add users. You can either drag and drop a file into here or just do manual selection. I want to have Ashwarya, Amanda, and say Ashley in this group. So you can just type out here and add anyone that you want in this group. And then when you've added the users, now you have a group that you can target. So this is good for small static groups that don't really change much. Now the magic is in the second type of group that you can create called a dynamic group. So what are dynamic groups? Dynamic groups is where you can set different conditions and target the exact people who meet preset conditions and criteria that you've already set up from before. So let's call this group Australia Operations Managers Early Adopters. Let's say we want to target the early adopters in an Australia operations team, for example, at manager level. Now what you do here is you add in different conditions. So this is where you can connect this to any data source that you have. So the most common is HRIS, that's what everyone connects it to, but you can also connect with ERP, very popular, and just like any data lake that you have. So a few of our customers have connected this to their overall enterprise data lake, and it's really remarkable like how precise and specific your targeting can be. And the same with like workflows and different tools, like let's say you're driving AI adoption, for example, and there's a tool which you want people to do a new process or a new workflow in, you can add in that workflow activity criteria here too. So it's really any data that you have, even if you have a CSV file or an Excel sheet about who likes chocolate and who likes mango, it can take that as well. So it really takes any data that you've got, you can feed it with. Then what you do here is you select the conditions. So for the purpose of this group, let's say we want the country to be Australia, and then maybe we want people who report to a certain person. So let's say we want everyone who reports up to Charles. And how many levels below Charles? Maybe we want like his just direct reports, or maybe we want his entire organization, or down to mid-level managers. Let's say we select 5 levels below for the purpose of this. And then we might want to know employee start date. We might not want to include new joiners in this communication because we might have a specific journey for them around how to do this from scratch. We're not really trying to change them to do something new, right? They have to do it that way from the beginning. So let's say we want people who started in the organization before, say, 1st of January this year. And then maybe a last condition that we want to add in is, say, department name. So we want the department to be operations, let's say. So now with this targeting, what we've done here is we've selected anyone who meets these criteria, like regardless of where this data is based, like these kind of criteria would usually be from your HRIS system. So where you have like which geography do people sit in, what are their reporting lines, their employee start date, department name, like this is very classic HRIS data. But let's say you also add in here ERP workflow, for example, and then you can set in like anyone who started the performance module in a new Workday implementation, for example, or anything else. So you can combine it with workflows as well. But for the purpose of this, let's say this is the audience that we have. And now anything that you communicate or create or put out to this audience will be to anyone that matches these criteria. So if you have someone moving into Australia, or someone starting to report to Charles, or someone being promoted from level 6 to level 5, or just join the operations team. Any changes would then mean that they immediately get the right communications and capability building that is designed for this group. So you no longer have to put specific names and people into lists and manage like who exactly is in this audience. Like, do you remember who reports to Charles? And is there anyone who just moved to Australia? You never have to remember that. You just input the criteria, and then you don't have to think about who are the specific people that meet these criteria. That's what the system takes care of. And then what you can do here as well is you can add in an alternative condition. So let's say you want anyone who meets any of these criteria, or you just want anyone who might be called Paul. And then you just put in anyone who's called Paul. Oh, there's even a Paul Gonzalez in here. But let's say Paul. So now what this means for this audience is that whenever you communicate something to this group that we've just named, then anyone who meets these criteria, or just anyone who's called Paul. So even if you're in sales in South Africa and don't report to Charles at all, but your name is Paul, then you will receive the same communications as well. So this is useful if you want to include, for example, a certain department that should receive that communication too, or like anyone who's of a certain like employee type. Or group membership is a good one as well. So this is where you can then select anyone who is a member of any of these groups, for example. So maybe you want your change champions and your Australia managers. So either they have to meet these criteria or they have to be part of an existing group. And you can also include people who are not part of a specific group. So maybe you want like someone who's not a member of the US supply chain managers, for example. You want to exclude them from certain communications or capability building that you're doing around your change activation. Then you can exclude them here as well. So that's how you create conditions that people either meet or something completely else that you also want to be part of it. So let's say now we have these Australia managers reporting into Charles. We also have anyone who's named Paul and is a member of these, but is not a member of our US supply chain managers. So that's how we then save these conditions. So now we've created a dynamic group called Australia Operations Managers, Early Adopters. We've set the criteria. Then what you can do here is also set your refresh cycle. So maybe you want news to this group to go out daily, meaning anyone who suddenly reports to Charles or moved into Australia or is now called Paul will get this update and the communications and capability building you've set out to them the same day that that happens. Or you might want it to happen weekly on Monday, for example. So maybe you want the communications to go out every Monday, but not any time the week prior. So then it will look at all the changes that happened the previous week and then send out the scheduled information, communications, content, capability building at that time on Monday to all of the people that now meet these criteria. So you select your refresh cycle and then you confirm and create, and now you have your group. And in this case, there was no one that matched my very weird criteria of both reporting to Charles or being called Paul. So there are no users in this group, but when you set this up with your data, there will be the names, the emails, and all the people who are in this group. So that's how you set up your groups, and everything is automated, right? So you set this up once and done, and then all the communications, capability building, information, change activation will be automatically delivered based on who meets the criteria. And let's say you need to make some changes, right? Let's say Charles got fired and there is now a new manager in this department. What you then do is you go in here and you click on Charles, you replace this with now it's Edward, for example. And then you just save the conditions. So exactly the same audience as you had before, but now people who are reporting to Edward instead. And then you save that condition instead. So super easy to just go in and make any changes if there's any new condition that you want to add into these groups. And that's how you can manage them easily on the go as your change initiative is ongoing as well. So no more email distribution list craziness, just clean and simple targeting to get the right information to the right people at the right time.